Very good. So we can start now the official part. I hope all systems are operational. Looks like. So stream is on. You can hear me, see me. And of course, Zoltan is also here. Vitor Silva. And as always, what interests me, where you're coming from and what's the weather? Snow. How hot is it in Celsius, if possible? Celsius degree. And we can start with the content. Okay, welcome to the 131st edition of Airhacks TV. Exactly, this is 131st edition. And let's start with Siddharth's question from the chat, because chat always has priority here. Kindly share your experience on leveraging AWS HTTP API Gateway Managed Services Lambda authorizers. So, works great. So what you can do, API Gateway. So what you can do with API Gateway, Lambda authorizers is you can pass the path from API Gateway to a Lambda. You can deploy the Lambda and it will run more or less, it looks like, inside the API Gateway. Of course, it will run in Lambda runtime, but it is conceptually inside the API Gateway. And the API Gateway will pass to the Lambda the information. And Lambda will decide whether the request is okay or not okay. And then the HTTP API Gateway will create a token for you. So what means is, it works. I mean, it works great if you need it, right? So it's not like the default case, but what you can do, what you can do with it is you can have path-based authorization. So you can say, no, /guest is available to everyone, but /guest, I don't know, guest /private is only available, or /admin is only available for scope admins, for instance. So, of course, my Lambdas run in Java with snap start. It's okay. Of course, there's a cold start, so the first hit will be slower, and then it's warm. Exactly. So this is my my experiences. So it means if you need a more sophisticated authorization, go for it. But this is more or less exception from the rule. Not like in every project we use Lambda authorizers. Okay. First question. So now the first question from the YouTube channel, and it was inspired by the comments from my short about sealed interfaces. And the comment was, I actually forgot. Okay, also breaks encapsulation. Okay, exactly, this is what I saw there, and it also breaks the solid principle. So, but what is sealed interface in Java? So sealed interface is, so the sealed is new, in permits is new. And this is a strange concept. First, why strange? Because it's new, right? So in Java, interfaces were used to hide the implementation, or should be used to hide the implementation. So you have multiple implementations, one interface. Someone uses interfaces and doesn't know anything about the implementations, so you could swap the implementations. And implementations were classes usually, but it could be Java records, it could be enums, it could be whatever you like. So we have one interface, multiple implementation, they are swappable. So what means is the user of the interface must not know which implementations we have. But if we take a look at the sealed interface, it is actually the opposite. So if you take a look at the opposite, at the interface, you already know which implementations are you using. So you see that the connection permits OracleDB and PostgreSDB would be on the right side, and which means is it actually breaks the encapsulation. But the point is why it is useful. It is useful for the compiler, because the compiler knows there can be only two in this particular case, which means is if we have a switch statement, for instance, and we are switching on connection. So there are only two cases. This is the OracleDB and PostgreSDB, and default is not needed. So that's the idea. But what I also like to use the sealed interface is in cases where I really have only 2 implementations, and this is highly unlikely that a third will happen. Right now, in multiple infrastructure as code projects with CDK, for instance, if we have 3 stages, so you have 3 implementations of an interface with different behavior. So I tend to use a sealed interface with permits, because if I take a look at the interface, I see all the stages, which is additional information for me. So I don't have, so I prefer this over Javadoc. Okay. So yes, sealed interfaces break encapsulation, but this is a very specific, or break encapsulation. Yeah, they reveal which implementations are used, which is a good thing because a sealed interface serves different purpose than usual interface. And I'm not using usual interfaces very often. And on that note, what I forgot to mention is that I already recorded over 800 shorts. This is because I was back from the JFokus conference, and I have one slide with amount of shorts, and this was 650. And I said, okay, this slide is old, should be more, and it was hard to find out how many they are, and they are already 800, which is incredible. So, okay, we covered this. Now let's take a look at the patterns. Okay, this is now Dempile. This is friend of the show. This is Amar Chair here, Mr. Dempile, and he is already a recurring guest. So first time, hello. Okay. So Reverse asked me, do you know any German-based Java Jakarta off-the-shelf hosting providers where I can upload the WAR file and they do the rest? Could you? Cloud is not an option for me, unfortunately. So, but this would be a cloud, right? So there is the Payara cloud, which is a cloud, and this is exactly what you ask for. And they are not in Germany, but they can launch the Payara cloud in Frankfurt region, and then they are in Germany. So so Payara cloud is the closest to this. Yeah. And what you're asking is like cloud without cloud, and what you mean is cloud without AWS or Azure. So I think it is technically very possible that the Payara cloud guys are launching their cloud on, let's say, Hetzner, but then it will be in Germany. But Hetzner I will still call this is kind of a cloud, right? So Kanail, Laurent, hello, long time didn't see QA, which is unfortunate, but welcome back. And today we will have a Time Machine back, 100 episodes, so let's see. And so now Siddharth asked me, if we are using Azure Entra ID for authentication, is it a standard pattern to decode the token which is available in request header to assert with some header values passed in Lambda authorizers? So the Entra ID is, I think, this is the new name for Azure Directory. And to my knowledge, what we already did with Azure Directory, we could create a standard JSON Web Tokens, and you can absolutely decode standard JSON Web Token. I even did it in my shorts. So search in my shorts. So what you can do, you can decode the token. This is base 64 encoded. So yeah, and there's also a project, Jotanizer, Adam Bean. I forgot the URI, I have to admit. And that's the project. And the Jotanizer is able to create tokens on the fly. So you can, of course, decode this. So it creates the tokens. So you can use the tokens here for testing. This is, it's already old, 6 years old. Time flies. I thought this is a new one, but this old one. Okay. We have the Jotanizer. Okay, now caching. So Mr. Dempile listens to Dempile. His name is actually Amar. So Amar already knows my opinion seems like, because say I'm against caching, which is partially, I'm not against caching, but what I don't like is that projects are starting with caching because they assume the database is too slow, which is not always true. And they use caching and get additional problems with caching, like, for instance, consistency problems. So in my opinion, you should start without caching, and only if it's too expensive or too slow or whatever, then I will introduce caching as a solution to our problem, because everything is a trade-offs. So now ask me what we could use. So there's InfiniSpan, which is Hazelcast, and you could also use something like Redis, which is a bit problematic from the license perspective, or EHcache, but Hazelcast and InfiniSpan is actually a good choice. So now, and the question is, let's read the entire thing. Is we have a big load on the database, and we want to implement a caching system in order to reduce the charge or the load. So this is actually good. It means they have already a load and would like to reduce it. So which is perfect. So I mean, okay, you know why I'm doing this. But you want layers of cache. But we want to know the different layers of cache and the use cases where caching makes the big difference. And what are the best ways to implement it? By the way, we are thinking of Hazelcast in Payara and InfiniSpan in Quarkus. You have a good choice because Payara uses clustering with Hazelcast, and InfiniSpan is a natural choice for Quarkus. So this is a very good choice. So first, maybe the simple solution, but the least obvious one, is use cache headers. So if you have a REST service and you have a proxy service in between, and you use the proper headers, your system will not even be accessed. It is cached in the browser or in the proxy service in between. So or you could install a reverse proxy. This would be actually the best choice, because you will hit, the cache layer and not even your backend system. But I think it's not an option. So I guess. So let's say this won't work. So in this particular case, if you use, let's say, InfiniSpan on Hazelcast, there are distributed caches, or there are local caches, like Caffeine, for instance, in Quarkus. You could use Caffeine cache. And what the Caffeine cache means is this is crazy fast concurrent hash map, but it's only local. So the question is, why you need a distributed cache? So usually you need distributed cache for two things. So one thing could be cache invalidation, and the other could be cache synchronization. So what's the difference? Cache invalidation means if someone changes a single node. So I'm already assuming that you're running Quarkus in cluster or Payara in cluster. It means you have two independent servers, right? So if you have a cache, distributed cache, and you write, let's say, a comment to the airhacks, gist, then okay, if you update a comment, then what you could do is to send an invalidation message to the other node, and the comment will disappear, and the next hit it will reappear. So this could happen, right? Or you could decide to have synchronization or replication, which means if I change a state in the cache, what InfiniSpan and Hazelcast both can do is to replicate the message to the other node. Now you have two options. You can synchronously replicate or asynchronously replicate. So synchronous replication means you have to wait until the data arrives in all the nodes. And asynchronous replication means I write to one node and the data gets asynchronously replicated to the other nodes. So, so what it means is the first one is slow, doesn't scale, but is consistent. And the second one is asynchronous, inconsistent, but scales. And if we had a little bit more time, what we could do is we can actually even discuss the consistency, availability, partition tolerance pattern with that. So this actually is a nice explanation of how to distribute. Which options do you have to have a consistent, scalable, distributed hash map, right? Okay. I hope it is clear. So if you, but if you have a load on database, I think you are caching because of reading, right? So if you're reading a lot and you're not writing, you don't even need a distributed cache. So you could have a local cache, but then I will maybe use even caffeine. Okay. So, and, okay, in request, okay. And Siddharth, you asked me, pattern to decode the token which is available in request header to assert it with some header value as a part of Lambda authorizers. So what if you would like to assert, so what you usually have to do is you can download a public key, and where the public key lives depends on where the public key lives is specified in the well-known endpoint. And if you download the public key, you can verify whether the key inside you can verify whether the JSON Web Token was modified, because in the last part there is signature, and you can verify the signature, or the endpoint verifies it for you. Okay. Perfect. So the next one is the Frank the Tank. So, which a nice name, by the way. So, and he asked something on the Discord channel, airhacks Discord channel. So this is this one, this Discord airhacks is public one, so you can join. But this is very quiet place. People ask me several days later, I answer. So it's like, this is not crazy traffic there. So, and Frank the Tank asked me the following. You often mention things you encountered. I would really be interested seeing your vast experience. So vast experience as consultant. So it's not that vast. So I'm a single person, and this is only an infinite amount of projects I can actually do. And since pandemic, I spend a lot of time less consulting and more programming actually. So yeah, but post-mortems and what you learned. So this is interesting, because this is usually what I did and I'm doing. As the saying goes, no plant survives the initial enemy contact. Exactly. And sometimes you just have to do ugly things. And I think Donald Rumsfeld, as a general, said you have to go to war with the army you have. Right? So not what you wish or you have to do exactly. So would love to hear more. Kind of like that no one uses Java 8, which in reality a lot of code bases has been written in Java 8, and you often just update the version and add on top. Refactoring everything is just too expensive, which is true. Okay, so sometimes I'm in charge of running the entire project. So someone hires me, it's like, hey, we have to start a project, help us. And they ask me for architecture consulting, but it is really hard to explain architecture. So what always happens, I end up coding with the team, and we code together. Okay, how this is working? From my perspective, and I think if you watch the airhacks, you probably already know what happens, right? So we will start with the newest possible Java version. All the libraries, whatever we use, has to be fresh. So usually the most recent Quarkus we can get. And sometimes even newer. So in a Lambda project, there was Lambda projects, we started with, I think it was Java 8 or Java 11. And Java 17 was already on the horizon. So we used the custom runtime from Mark Sales, by the way, an AWS fellow, and we used the Lambda runtime to have Java 17 earlier than it was released, because we knew that our project it takes longer to go to production, and then Java 17 came out, or Java 21 even, and we replaced the custom runtime with the real one. So start as fresh as possible. Now, what we also do in the first iterations, we write also, or I insist, if possible, so this is my suggestion, to write simple code which expresses as directly as possible the business domain, the ideas or the use cases, target domain, the business logic. So, and sometimes even we say, okay, we don't care. We write interfaces with static methods, Java classes with public attributes. I really don't care. Because what's really important at the beginning is that we can write code fast, move fast. But my expectation is that over time, our code base gets better and better. What I think doesn't work, what lots of projects try to do is, at the beginning, they hire an architect to define the perfect architecture with layers, patterns, ideas, and then they hire developers who have no motivation to build a great system. And they say, okay, everything is done. You only have to implement the logic. This don't work at all. I think what you need is just developers who have fun developing software. In my experience, it doesn't matter whether they are experienced Java developers or not. You only need Java developers who have fun developing software. So if you get such developers, you will build a great system. I think you can build a great system. Whether you will, it really depends. So what means is, we start with very simple code, and we learn as quickly as possible about the business target domain, and then iterate quickly and write better and better code. And by the way, the question is related to the JFokus talk, where I added here on my YouTube channel. Real world lean Java practices, patterns, hacks, and workarounds. I will talk. I will cover the talk a little bit later. But so this is the idea, and how to build great software. So regardless what we are doing, the very first thing I'm doing is I like to set up a continuous integration system. So I try to automate everything from the beginning. Means everything has to run on commit, as much automation as possible. Then every developer gets production-like environment. So this is also very important. That if they like, they can try whatever they like without damaging the integration environment. And the next thing is I don't emphasize unit tests. System tests, stress tests, and integration tests are more important than unit tests. So this is how it goes. And okay, and then refactoring. Okay, so I can spend actually infinite amount of time, especially in cloud projects, to optimize things like build better monitoring and build whatever. But everything takes time. So for me, what I have to do, I have to force myself to say, okay, it is good enough. Now let's do the next thing. But the danger is that you forget what is not done there. So I think the most important thing is, in such cases, is then you can maintain a to-do list that you remember, okay, in order to really, close this feature, you have, to perform these tasks. To make it better for operations, maintainability, or whatever. So I think we can move quickly. We can switch between tasks, but at least you have to maintain the a feature or to-do task list in order that if you have a little bit more time to come back and refactor the things. And this is what I tend to do. Sometimes, in project, I need some break or a quiet minute, and in the quiet minute, what I tend to do is to refactor things which are easy to refactor, for instance. Okay. I hope this was, and by the way, also Post-Mortem, this was funny thing. So in larger projects, so the funniest one was, there was a project without stress tests and no system tests. And they had released once a year, and once a year they had task force because the project didn't work. So management asked me lessons learned, and I said, okay, what I will do is focus less on unit tests because the code coverage for unit tests is meaningless in this project, as we can learn from the past. So we need to write more system tests, then we can reuse the system tests and write our end-to-end tests. And then write performance tests or stress tests. And they say, yeah, great idea. And next year was the same. So I think it was 3 years in a row. I was contracted 3 times. And the lessons learned were exactly the same to the point the last time. I just, completely reused the slides and just changed the date. So it means you also have to be interested in the quality of the project and not only, in statistics. Because sometimes I have the feeling that the goal of the project is to satisfy all the statistics and especially SonarQube, make SonarQube happy and code coverage happy, and whether the project actually is maintainable or not, no one cares. Okay, let's see back to the chat. Do you think Quarkus is taking the same path of Spring, which I don't like, because they do everything for us in a black box, impossible to unit test easily, and create too many annotations? I think the testing, this is hard to tell, right? Because a very good question, Kanal. Laurent, I think is their first name. So, if let's say you have a Kafka project with Quarkus, right? So what Quarkus can do is you can write a Kafka test, and Quarkus will launch Kafka behind the scenes in test container. So it is very convenient and it just works. I never use that. Why not? Because usually I'm also in charge in Kafka. So what I tend to do is to set up Kafka first on my machine, set up Kafka first in integration and production, have the pipeline, and then just use the test Kafka instance, because I don't believe that the Kafka inside Quarkus behaves exactly the same as the Quarka would be cool. Kafka outside Quarkus. And in projects, we have usually complete different problems, like, certificate management in Kafkas and stuff like that. So I rather would like to do the hard things first, and not, everything works behind the scenes, but then I try to go to integration stage and I'm lost. So that's what I see. This is, but I think Quarkus is also that successful because developers like this experience that the Quarkus manages the resources for you. But Quarkus is not as black box as you might think. It could be, but what I'm misusing Quarkus as just better microprofile runtime, which is crazy fast, and I don't use too much Quarkus magic in my projects. So this is my policy. Okay. Okay, Elastic. Electromatic. I thought you are Elastic Matic, but you are Electromatic. Maybe it's next month you get a colleague who is Elastic, but do it for fun and money, right? So both can be true. Because I think if you like to learn, you have fun, and learning means also improving yourself. And this is because you think, okay, after the project I know more than before, so I become a better person afterwards, which is more fun and the project gets better. So this is I think important. Important. I think having fun is important. So now, Mr. Kaspar Rinkevich, which is friend of the show, but he was censored, not by me. So maybe he said something against Quarkus and my artificial twin, artificial AI twin, artificial intelligence twin redacted the message. Okay. Siddharth asked me, in serverless, what is your thoughts on logging and distributed tracing? Should we use CloudWatch as go-to, or we should continue to approach logging in persistent store like EFS? So I use CloudWatch. I use X-Ray. And why? Because it's already there and it's actually great. So if you're interested in Siddharth, take a look at EMF, embedded matrix format. So if you write in EMF, CloudWatch even creates a matrix for you. So you have to be just careful, because if you write a lot of logs, which some Java projects do, it can become very expensive. But what I sometimes do in pipelines is I'm writing to my own file inside the pipeline and then copy the file to S3. So afterwards, I have both CloudWatch and my own minimalistic log. Siddharth, what you can also do is, so in Lambdas, what I do, just system.println, and it gets redirected to CloudWatch. Or if you would like to have a clean log, what you can do is you can use the, I think it's CloudWatch log is the dependency, CloudWatch logs dependency, I think. And you get SDK and you can write your own log, which is very clean, a minimalistic log. But what we do in the cloud, we write, also I tend to write less but meaningful messages and not everything, rather than, just really, we spend some time, to thinking about the quality of the message. Okay. Umar asked me, how did you learn so many things in deep? I don't think I know a lot in deep. I mean, you have to listen to the podcast. There will be one podcast with Mr. Franz. And I think he's crazy. So he's committed multiple projects, and he understands assembly, JVM, and everything. So, I mean, what I try to do is maybe to rotate it a bit. So what I did, what happened to me, right? So I used a lot of enterprise stuff like application servers, Payara, Java, Jakarta EE, transactions, databases, and then I almost forgot, basic things in Java because I never used them. So now my projects are lower level Java. I have my shorts. So now I remember Java again, and I think a good exercise is to almost forget things and remember them again. So and then, you get better in it. Okay, but I get better and better questions. Incredible. Shark asked me, "Hi Adam, do you name your endpoint classes resource?" Yes. Why? Because they are easy to spot. So I call, for instance, customers resource, participants resource, airhackers resource, users resource. So always plural because it's RESTful. And why? Because I found that in old Sun tutorials. And my approach is, if I find, the origin, a project which started something and they introduce naming conventions, then I try to replicate the naming conventions. For instance, on AWS, because Siddharth asked me questions, right? There are different naming conventions for stacks. There's not consistent. So you have one naming convention for stacks, other one for logical IDs, for resources. So I am searching in tutorials from AWS and try to replicate this in my project. So my project look like AWS project, because the hope is if someone knows AWS and looks at the project, will immediately know what's going on. And the same was true for resource. So I found this in the at the very beginning, JAX-RS tutorials from Sun Microsystems, and Sun Microsystem created the JAX-RS resources and JAX-RS tutorials with resource naming, and I just replicate the naming. Exactly. Spring Boot, I never use Spring Boot stack. I have no idea. And Spring Boot is for me unusable because it starts too slow. So I cannot use it. So about HTMX, very interesting technology. And actually, there is a podcast. So I recorded a podcast with Carson. And this is the creator of HTMX with, this is actually. Now some marketing FM. And if you would like to know how it happened, Carson Gross, is his name. And what we do is we explain how HTMX happened. And the interesting part, Carson is a Java guy, actually. So, okay. Wow, you're on fire, chat. Very good. Shag asked me, what do you use for querying database in REST API endpoints and directly returning the results? Actually, in one project, we are moving from JPA to JDBC, possibly, because in Java 21, JDBC and JDBC with Java records is fun for queries. It's the fastest possible option you have. Hibernate projection, no, never Hibernate. What I use is JPA. And native queries sometimes. So I use JPA for productivity, but if we have complex queries, for instance, the queries are already there, sometimes are there because, you know, we work with very good database experts and we get the queries for free. Then I would use JDBC with Java records. So just use JDBC, convert the entire thing to a Java stream and map it to Java record, record it, and you get the fastest possible query engine, and everyone understands that. Shag asked me, do you use MapStruct for mapping queries to DTOs? No, never use MapStruct. No MapStruct, no dozer, nothing. And why not? Let's see whether I found it. Adam Bean, dozer design problem. Design problem. Exactly. So in case dozer or bin utils are working well, you have a problem. So and what I described in the post is how old is it? 12 years old. Post. What I described here, if you have an automatic mapping service between entities and DTOs and it works great, what usually means you have design problem because you're thinking that you are decoupling, but you didn't decouple anything because every change on an entity requires a change in the DTO, or you have to maintain the naming, or you have to maintain the mapping in the framework, which over time becomes harder and harder to maintain. So if you like, take a look on this. Okay, now back to Mr. Shag. So Shag, you're on fire. How do you keep TypeScript types and Java types in sync? I don't use TypeScript. I use JavaScript. And yeah, but you can use OpenAPI CodeGen. But in my project, I use web component JavaScript, no dependencies. Okay, and now finally, Casper asked me, how can we encourage developers to write integration tests rather than meaningless mocked unit tests? I mean, if you think about this, mocked unit tests don't make any sense. So you have to tell them you can do this, but why? I mean, what do you get out of that? So usually I only write unit tests if something is complex, right? So we have complex logic, or I know that I will introduce an error, right? So already string operations, or even sometimes if I have a huge JSON object and I have to extract stuff, I write a unit test, you know, to write a JSON path expression because I know it is faster. So whatever is complex, I write unit tests. But I'm assuming we have a distributed system. In a distributed system, the problems are not necessarily misunderstood business logic. So the problem is that is the distribution, so the invocation of the system, right? You need a token, you need authentication. This is actually the hard things to do. So I would say the real value is to write integration, or I call them end-to-end tests, and they are hard at the beginning, but get easier and easier. And I think this is the way to go. And by the way, I submitted multiple CFPs about this topic, about testing. And maybe if they're accepted, they will be accepted at one point of time. So we get a nice 1 hour session, or the next time we can talk a little bit more about that. So you have to ask questions, of course, right? So now the reason why we are 1 week later is because I was invited to JFokus conference, which was, by the way, great. It was bigger than expected, nicer than expected, and met a lot of... the last time I was in JFokus was 2016, so after 9 years, I was back to JFokus, and I delivered a talk, real world lean Java practices, patterns, hacks, and workarounds, and it was recorded, so you can watch it if you like. And it was, I also pointed out the tests, the integration tests and stress tests. So I think it matches well with the session. But I got also the feedback, and the feedback was interesting because first there were no questions, and the entire story is I thought that whatever I will say is obvious, too trivial for a conference, because I said no dependencies, testing, and so forth. Exactly what we're discussing right now. But so in the airplane, I prepared the slides, but I thought usually I would like to show some code. So I also showed the code at the end, and then delivered a talk. By the way, it's a huge room. And what happened is that there was no questions during the talk, and after the talk, I got lots of attendees contacted me and wanted it. So we have a long discussion, so actually 2-3 hours about that. And I got the feedback, and the feedback was completely like polarized. So there are some said great talk, and the others say way too fast, way too much content, and which was interesting because I thought there's almost nothing there, right? So too much content and so forth. So if you like, watch the talk here. It was released yesterday, a fresh one. And give me a feedback or write a comment would be nice, actually, because I'm really curious about your opinion and whether it was too fast or not. So now, I got this question in my YouTube channel in a short, and this is general feedback about my opinions, or a general context about my person, opinion. So I spend time mostly in enterprise projects, high level projects, applications, microservices, clouds. So I never was in JVM. I never built a JVM or something very low level. So what it means for me, I tend to write simple code, even if it's not. It could be always faster. So I don't care about, micro optimizations, because I believe that Java optimizes very good. And because we have stress tests, I would like to see the problem first before I optimize. And this is why I get often and the shorts, okay, what you did is not efficient. And I say, okay, and then I think about, okay, would it be fast enough in my project? If it is, I don't care. So because I think long-term maintainability and understandability and readability, for me, is more important than micro optimizations, which can actually also change if we get newer JVM versions, right? Okay. So this was the direct. So I think this happens often, that someone asks me about performance of code, and you have to know my context. My context is einfach is German is simple. It's just writing simple code or readable code, and I spend more time about naming than thinking about performance, because I like to measure the performance first. And this is also why I don't like to start with caching, because I would like to see how slow the database really is, and then if I introduce caching and it's faster, it's also fun, right? To see that something improved. Okay, this one, also from Discord, this was also interesting. Airhacks live. No, live. Airhacks FM. So I had a couple of episodes with Ronnie Dover from Dopplerware, and this is the company behind Digma. And what Digma is an interesting product. What they introduce is like automated observability, so you can include the monitoring and data and open telemetry in your unit tests. So it will be the next step ahead. If you already have a stress test, I think with Digma you could increase the observability of your project. And so you can listen to the podcast, but what I actually wanted to say is, then the startup, the Dopplerware, they are on Product Hunt, and they are launching a product. So if you're interested, to ask Mr. Dover, greetings from me, and maybe you get an test version or whatever. So just saying, so trying to help a startup. And by the way, they started with, I think, Python and Node.js. Listen to the podcast. And then Mr. Donny Rover said, okay, then they spent some time at Java conferences, and Java developers were the nicest people ever. This is what he said. And they provided him the best possible feedback. And this is why they switched from Python and Node.js to Java, which is cool. So this is why, if possible, we could support them and at least, retweet whatever they do and promote them. Okay, now, Caspar, how we can encourage, okay, we had it already, a little dumb question, is there an equivalent in Quarkus for Spring Config Server? I don't know what Spring Config Server does, but what Quarkus implements is microprofile config. So you can inject configuration, and the configuration can be fetched from various sources. And for instance, even on Azure Cloud, there is a microprofile microprofile config source for Azure, and in Quarkus, yeah. So I mean, Quarkus is based on standards in my projects, or Quarkus is based on standards, but also has how to explain it. So we have microprofile and we have Jakarta EE, and this is like the boring technology. Dependency injection is standardized, and Quarkus is one of the runtimes which implement the standard. Micronaut would be another one. Micronaut and standard and Quarkus are very fast on top of that, because they optimize at build time, which is our main difference to Spring and other application servers. So this is why I like Quarkus. Based on standards. In my projects, we try to only use standards. So it means in Quarkus, you only depend, on, I don't know, maybe 3-4 extensions. So now, if you, and one of the extensions is the microprofile config, which is not even extension, it is part of Quarkus. So what you could do is, you could add extension. There are hundreds of extensions which configure Quarkus from whatever you like. Okay. How Jakarta EE development differs from Spring and Spring Boot development? Not at all, not that much, and because if you know the history is, then there was Java EE was first, then Spring Boot came, and then the next Java EE release was announced. This was, I think, Java EE 6. And at the same time, Spring Boot Rod Johnson author created inject dependency injection, which standardized the dependency injection. And then Java EE was changed to use the Spring's dependency injection. And then Spring didn't use the dependency injection anymore. So it means there's like coexistence. And Spring uses a lot of Java EE APIs anyway. So they use, JPA, they use JMS, and they use whatever. What they don't like is the JAX-RS. This is what I know. They have their own JAX-RS endpoints, REST endpoints, but they don't use JAX-RS. They have their own implementation, their own solution to expose RESTful services. But this is not that different. The main difference is the Quarkus and Micronaut are based on standards, and they are newer than Spring, and therefore they can optimize more. That's all. Isn't Spring Framework around wrapper around Java EE? Yeah, I don't know whether the Spring developers like this, that the Spring is wrapper around Java EE. It is hard to tell. So maybe they like to. So what I try, what I heard is how Spring is sold is that Spring is a best of breed. So you can pick whatever you like, and you get, the best possible implementation of everything, which I'm not interested at all in such a solution, because what I would like to have that all the projects use the same boring technology, so you don't have, to think about that. So like the convention is more important, but this is maybe the difference, right? Monorepo with multiple modules Maven project versus multi repo. It really depends. Sometimes I have one GitHub repository and many Maven projects, and now it comes, but they don't share a common parent. So I have to admit, in such projects, sometimes I even copy and paste code between the projects, because it is better than, to have dependencies, build time dependencies. Sometimes, not always, sometimes. It really depends. Okay. And LDS also asked me, you don't need types in the front end as you don't use TypeScript. I need types, but what I use the fetch, the fetch, and what I get out back is a JSON object, and with the structuring, I pick whatever is necessary in the right tests, and that's all. and with JavaScript and types. So you have, it's also funny because at the beginning we had Java. Java was type safe. And I don't know whether you remember, there was the entire discussion, Java is not productive because it's type safe. And therefore, we use Ruby, JavaScript, or Python to be not type safe, duck typing. So we can just, move very fast and we write more unit tests and therefore we are more productive. And now what happens to JavaScript? I think JavaScript now thinks about types. So JavaScript would like to be type safe. And TypeScript was introduced to be type safe, which and Java was always type safe. And now over time, JavaScript and TypeScript become more and more like Java, which is also interesting. So it means in the first place, the reasons to go away from Java were wrong, maybe, because now everything comes back to Java ideas. So also advise, if you ignore some hypes and you stick with one technology, if you're lucky, in a few years, everything comes back. And because, okay, cool. Let's see. I thought this would be a quick session because no one will join me because no one expects airhacks TV to be on Tuesday. But I think maybe we should shift to Tuesdays because there are lots of going on here right now. Okay, this was the Digma podcast. Now... So we almost done Digma, JFokus, and Frank the Tank. What I forgot is this one, 100 episodes back in time. So our time machine. And let's see. These were the questions from 2016. By the way, it was nearly the time as it was last time in JFokus. And let's take a look at the questions. So obviously I was after Java 1, so I explained my impressions. By the way, I will be at Java 1 in March, I think is in Redwood Shore. So I'm really curious how this will look like. There's an early bird, I think ends today. And so this one is relevant. Load balancing Java EE servers on Docker. So actually, we could cover this right now, and you would get exactly the same answer. So on Docker, I would use, for instance, Nginx, and you can load balance Docker. That's basically it. And if you take a look in my YouTube channel, as I remember, I even recorded a screencast and did it live. So you will need a kind of HTTP server which load balance the Docker engines. Oracle JVM versus others. So what happened in the last 9 years, I would say Oracle became less popular and the others become more popular because they do great job. So everyone does great job. So I would say the Oracle engineers do a stellar job, and Azul systems as well. And Azul systems introduce Crack, for instance. And the most popular JDK distribution according to statistics is Corretto because of Lambda and serverless in the cloud from AWS. And this is what I use in the shows, but just because right now I'm in AWS project. But Azul systems I use in another project. Oracle JVM still fine. OpenJDK, So there on Azure I would use the Microsoft OpenJDK. So that's all. So CDI and clustering, what the question back then was that, so if you, in EJBs, there was a clustering built in, and CDI, there is no clustering. So it was meant to be in one project. So also the questions, interesting, JAX-RS in Java server faces. By the way, I was in JFokus, and there was one Orga team. And I think the first 5 minutes, I had already interesting discussion because there was a woman, and she told me that she runs a recipe site in Sweden, one of the most popular one, and this is built with JSF, and it works good. So and so it means it is, I think still you can be crazy productive with JSF right now. The only problem is there are less and less. So JSF is less and less. Less and less hyped, not even popular, hyped. It means over time, less and less developers will use JSF, and less component providers for JSF will be available, and then it could die. So that's the only problem. From the technological perspective, if you build, dashboards or whatever, I think JSF is still good. But I'm not using JSF anymore for that reason, because I don't like to advise my clients to use JSF, because longer term it's not like, the JSF future is bright. It's more like it works great, but it becomes less and less popular over time, which can be a problem for maintainability. Also cool, micro versus full application servers in Docker. This was also a common question back then, because there were full application servers, but there was also Paramicro, there was Thorntail on Whitefly, and you saw what happened. So I always ignored the micro and always picked the full until Quarkus, because Quarkus, I got also in the chat, discussion, the question, what's the deal with Quarkus? The Quarkus is the opposite of an application server. So what the Quarkus does is, it doesn't use dynamic behavior or reflection behind the scenes. It tries, to optimize as much as possible at build time, and at runtime is just, easy bytecode, which is crazy fast. So JDBC pool configuration on Docker. So I actually don't know what the question was back then, but I'm assuming is, how to know where the database is, how to configure the database URI. And this is one question from the chat. It could be, for instance, the config. Or it is. So usually on Docker, everything is, or not only Docker, in the cloud, everything is configured in environment variables, and you only have to inject them. Portable SAM modules. So that's interesting what the SAM was back then. JavaFix in the future. So the future of JavaFix becomes actually more and more popular right now, I would say. So it was after 9 years, and there's a great company called Gluon, and they support JavaFix, and there are lots of healthy JavaFix projects, and at the DevOps conference, there was a nice thing called J Takachino. I think I tried to find it. J maybe like this. I don't know. JavaFX. Let's search for it. J Takuino. Oh man. And this is with JavaFX, and this is like Jupyter Notebook. So take a look on this. So really interesting. But the cool story is, back then everyone said, okay, JavaFX is dead, and after 9 years we get interesting projects. So REST API and validation, a common question. You can use Hibernate validator, but what I prefer to do meanwhile is I just focus on JSON. I get JSON from outside, and then this is where I said I can use JSON path, or I can just write a custom logic to have a nice validation messages. Consuming REST service HTTP header interpretation. So you can inject headers. How to profile server startup. You can run the server in with an agent, and you can completely profile that. Service communication without Docker. No idea what ask. Whitefly monitoring capabilities, event sourcing, and Java EE. This one is interesting. Event sourcing or event-driven architectures. In the cloud right now, most of my projects are event-driven. And outside the cloud, they were never event-driven. And the reason being is because cloud emits events the entire time. So I only have to consume them. It's very easy, to consume. For instance, if you already get questions regarding AWS. So Event Bridge, everything lands in Event Bridge. I only have, to react to it. So it is convenient. And outside of the cloud, I don't like the idea that I have to send event first and then consume it, right? So, okay. That's all. I would say thank you for that many questions. And this was actually one of the longest show, or so it is on Tuesday. And I announced it very late. So thank you all for asking, and I would say see you in March. This is in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and with new questions, and watch my video from JFokus and give me a feedback. It would be interesting. What's your opinion? Did I cover too much, or was it fine for you? Okay. Thank you a lot. See you next time. Bye.